Okay, welcome back, everybody around the world. Welcome to all my subscribers. Sorry for that restart. So this is an important topic that I want to cover for today. Hopefully, more than just a few people watch the video and take the time to listen to what I have to say. So I don't want this to be a really long video, so I'm not going to be quoting things, getting deep into certain topics for a long time. But I'm going to cover quite a few different things. So we have, like the title says, there's three different matters. There's disclosure, things that we will be told by authorities. There's truth, and there's deception. Okay, so three different subtopics that I want to cover for today. And from the deception, you get these delusions, right? So there's prevalent delusions going on in the UFO community today, where I would say, on the vast whole, if you were to look at everybody who believes in ETs and UFOs, they're part of the UFO community. Therefore, I would say, just by based on what I've seen, what I've heard, people say, and so forth, just the average person, I would say that over half, easily over half, probably towards 60%, maybe more, of the UFO broader community, just like everybody in general, they believe at least one major delusion. And I've seen this grow. Those numbers weren't as tangibly, perceivably high, but I've seen them grow. More and more people, in other words, a lot of people, like toward a majority. If it's over 50%, it's a majority. They're believing things that are delusions. So that's why I wanted to go through disclosure and truth and deceptions here tonight. So anybody with common, like when I was younger, when I turned 18, even before I was 18, I was deep into UFOlogy, studying up, reading up stuff, researching stuff. In other words, you know what I mean? Researching, call it studying, but doing my research and everything counts as study. And over the 20 plus years since then, I've learned a lot, and I've developed and changed a lot in what I believe. So when you're younger, we were all there at one point, or you're there now. But when you're younger, it's very easy, and you may not realize it at the time when you're that young. But just the way the human mind works at that age, you absorb a lot of things in, things that are truth, things that are deception, right? And you don't have the time or the life experience, let's just say in this example, uh, to test things for truth or deception, right? That you can do it in a short period of time. You can even start that when you're young, but when you've spent many years or decades, that's when you can even refine down and test what you have heard and what you therefore choose to believe. So a lot of the things that I openly just wanted to believe, because that's what you do when you're younger or when you're new to a topic, which is why I mentioned all that. So if you're new to ufology, you could be older. It doesn't necessarily depend on age, but yes, the same way that when you're younger and your mind is younger, you're eager to believe more fantastic things. You want to believe more fantastic things, and you'll come up with your own reasons why you think they're probably true. But over time, you'll realize that a lot of that stuff is baloney. Okay, so, but baloney itself isn't dangerous. It's dangerous when it becomes a delusion, especially a delusion that could be harmful, right? Not necessarily physically, but more so spiritually, if you want to call it that. Uh, in other words, me being a religious person, you could get in trouble, or bad things could happen to you directly as a result of believing what is delusions. So I want to cover these things here tonight: delusions, disclosure, truth, and deception. Okay, so one thing, now that I'm older, which you have to realize, so if you're new into the UFO community, if you have only, there's big YouTubers out there who, and I can say this, having 20 plus years, been doing my research and existed 20 years doing this stuff, right? Um, I can tell immediately when certain YouTubers are well versed, knowledged, and experienced. They don't have to have UFO experiences, but I'm saying, like, they're experienced. They know what they're talking about. They've done their research, their homework, right? You can tell the difference between a YouTuber who knows what they're talking about and knows the history of UFOs and somebody who's new to the ballpark, right? There's a few YouTubers, I won't say who they are, but it's very easily, you can easily discern, you can easily tell, right? But these people have become very popular, right? But they're new to it. They have new approaches and new understandings. Now, when you're new, if you're younger or if you're older but new to UFOlogy, it'll be easier for you because you've got less under your belt, background research. It'll be easier for you to fall victim to things that are delusions and not truth. Okay? So that's why I really hope more people watch this video, because there's a lot of people out there, like I said, in UFOlogy, in the UFO community, sorry. I would probably say around 60% of people, if not more, are believing what are delusions. And some of these delusions are that and they're like, there's truths that I want to go over. There's disclosure that I want to go over. There's delusions that I want to go over, and deceptions, right? So bear with me, right? But so there might be sometimes truth in the story that contains delusions, in the narratives that are delusional narratives, there may be truths. This is my point, right? So just bear with me. But one of the strongest and most prevalent delusions that is gaining traction, and it's like the number one delusion right now, and it makes sense to me because of everything I theologically believe and believe in terms of the end days approaching, what will happen, and all that. So it doesn't surprise me. But it concerns me, and this is why I'm sharing it, because a lot of people are believing what I warned about. And I warned in, a bunch of different videos over the last months or year or whatever. And I warned people that, I'm seeing an uptick, and now it's just gotten even worse in people believing that certain extraterrestrials were the gods, that they created us. And along with this layer of the deception, of the delusion, is that there is some truth to it, but I have to explain that, so bear with me. But that's just one layer of it, because along with that layer, believing that certain of these aliens created us, right? So if you believe that, that's not the only harmful delusion. Things are attached to that. Other delusional beliefs go along with that, right? So from that core delusion that the aliens created us, they're the gods, therefore, what will also branch from that is the delusion that the Bible's all a lie. Okay? So that goes in hand with it. And a lot of people who are believing that first core delusion are starting to say stuff like that. And it's becoming more widespread, right? And that's an example of it, I think, is the most dangerous delusion, and it's becoming more prevalent right now. Now, this has many implications, if I'm correct, in that this is a delusion. It's an incorrect thing to believe. It's not factual, it's delusional. Delusion is believing in something when it's not the case, right? So if you think the sky is red but it's blue, but you're going around believing and thinking, oh, it's red, that's a delusion. You delusionally think something is something that it's not, right? So the danger of this delusion is that from a religious perspective especially, is that in the end of days, when the legions of the celestial messengers arrive with Jesus and God's forces in whatever way God is manifest here, but when that judgment day event occurs, the good will be taken and the bad will remain. And we're told that the angels, the celestial messengers, aka extraterrestrials, they'll be coming here to separate the good from the wicked and all of that. They are what we call the angels. So the people of the mindset that these beings are the gods, okay, these are obviously fallen angels who have deceived them to believe this. So what they're doing, the fallen angel doesn't have to directly one-on-one deceive somebody, but the people fall victim to a narrative that is from the fallen angels. That's my point. They just fall victim. They hear the narrative and they choose to want to believe rather than testing them and this and that there. So if you're to believe that these beings created us, then if bad ones were to come here, they could really deceive you. And that's a severe problem. And also another delusion that people have, unfortunately, this one's coming from the Christian community, but in that same scenario, like I said, at the end of days, you're going to have a lot of Christians, a lot, who are going to be demonizing the angels and calling them demons. And it sounds crazy, but it's absolutely what will happen, because they literally do that now. They demonize all of any alien they say is a demon. This is from the very egocentric medieval Dark Ages church mindset, where Earth was the only thing where God created, life, and if anything turned up from elsewhere, it was a demon. You know what I mean? And some people refuse to believe in outer space, and a lot of these are Christians. So there's a lot of delusion even amidst the Christians. And ironically, they're even though they reject the concept that these beings created us, because they think these beings are all demons, what they will do is they will demonize the good ones when they arrive at the end of the day. So that's going to be very dangerous. And God will be forgiving, I would assume. But also, it depends on how much resistance you put up, right? A lot of Christians very strictly believe that all aliens are demons. So that could pose a major problem. If people are coming to save you, just think back to Sodom and Gomorrah. The messengers, the angels, they arrived, human-looking ones, arrived to Abraham and his family and took them out. And, during the earlier biblical narrative about that story, I think it was Abraham was questioning God, or one of the angels, something like that. I think maybe he was conversing with God, and he said, will you destroy Sodom and Gomorrah if there's 1,000 good people in it? And God said, no, I won't. And then Abraham asked, would you destroy it if there's 100 good people in it? He said, no, I wouldn't. 10 good people in it? No, I wouldn't. And then God told him, even if there was one righteous person in there, I wouldn't destroy it. Maybe one or two or something like that. Might have been one. Then God wouldn't destroy it. So that's why Abraham and them, being the only righteous people allegedly in those cities, they were escorted out of there by the messengers when God destroyed it. Right? So that's what's going to be happening at the end of days. So that we're told by Jesus that the end of days will be like when Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. So it really will be just like that scenario. And in the end days, the messengers, just like with Sodom and Gomorrah, will come to our earth, and they will take the good out of there when it is destroyed, like Sodom and Gomorrah. So that's what's going to be happening. So when those good ones come here, you're going to have a large chunk of Christians, majority, demonizing them, saying that they're fallen angels. A lot of Christians are being deluded to believe in a false rapture. But as I said many times before, and it's loathsome for me to even get into this, because I used to teach on it so many countless times. So I've said it a million times. It's in my books, my theology and Mende's book and whatever. I've gone through it so many times, it's loathsome. But and I forgot what I was saying there, so let's just go on from it then. If it comes back to me, I'll get on to it. But yeah, no, it eludes me. If someone's watching, they could remind me what it was, then I can get back to it. But it was one of the deceptions that's prevalent in the church. So, but by believing that all aliens are evil, it's such, like I said, it's a Dark Ages medieval mindset where Earth was the only thing God created. And this is because they knew very little about science, right? And to demonize everything out there in the universe as evil is ridiculous. The Bible told us the scenario. The scenario is that heaven was created, earth was created along with the heavens, right? The heavens are full of life called the host of the heavens. They bow and serve God. They some of them do work for God. They serve as messengers for this earth and so forth, right? So God created a cosmos full of life. Earth was just one of the planets on it. That's the biblical reality as the Bible teaches, right? So it's a lack of biblical understanding that causes these Christians to believe what they do. They don't realize the universe of life that God created and that's talked about in the Bible. That's the problem. That's why I try to raise awareness with that. Another thing I try to raise awareness, and you see why I'm mentioning these things, is that you have to understand that in Revelation 12, it told us the cosmology. I think that's the term for what occurred with good versus evil. So in God's created cosmos, with all the different worlds and the beings and all that, you had Earth created at some point. Now, on Earth, the children of men were the humans were beautiful, basically, good looking, and because some of these beings were human as well, there's other human forms throughout the universe, but because these messengers were human, they could lust over the Earth humans because they look the same. Excuse me. Let me take a sip of my coffee. And they could reproduce with them. Now, let me mention this before I forget. So in the book of Genesis, where it talks about the Benai Elohim said, "Let us make man in our image." Without going into further sidetracking, this is one of the admissions in the Bible itself that while, yes, God did the creating and the creation, God's the one behind it all, clearly, based on what the Bible tells us, and not just personal wacky opinion, other beings took part in or did some of the creating work. Specifically, creating humans. Humans were made in some part or maybe entirely by beings. And who are these beings that made that made Earth humans? They are called the Benai Elohim, which means sons of God. These are messengers. That's a term for a messenger, a heavenly messenger, celestial being. So even the Bible admits that certain celestial beings, aka the angels, aka aliens, they did create man and in their image. Now, they looked human also, which is why they made us in their image, right? So we look like them. They looked like us even before they made us because they made us look like them. All right. And this is the celestial human form, like I said, that's found throughout the cosmos, each in its own places. But it's not just on Earth. So these beings that made us weren't, reptilians. They weren't the Greys. They were human-looking extraterrestrials. Okay, maybe they were a mixed group. Maybe there were some other ones their part as well. But at the end of the day, it was human-looking ones that made us to look like them. Now, this is biblical. It's what the Bible tells us. It lines up with the other, Babylonian Sumerian texts, their creation story, which predates the Bible, but tells, in essence, the same thing. It lines up with the book of Enoch, which I believe should be canon. I've argued for that with evidence. A lot of people don't believe it is canon, but the book of Enoch talks about all of this stuff. So these beings, the ones that look like humans, have been coming here since the creation of, the earth and the life put upon the earth, and humans were made in their image. So that the Bible, ironically, gives some of the greatest points of true disclosure. So one is that, yes, aliens did have a hand in creating us. And we are, in essence, you could say, like a hybrid or a genetic experiment or genetic product by these beings, and we have some of their DNA, right? So that's true. That's disclosure. So if you put it in earthly terms, there's aliens out there that made us, and that sounds far out and hippie-ish, right? But it's biblically true. Okay, but there are aliens out there that look like us. They put human life on this planet. We are even created in their image. Well, that's biblical. Even though it sounds far out, that is biblical. Okay? And Jesus, when he came here to incarnate, I talk about in other videos, there's verses. Ironically, the only verses in the New Testament that talk about something incarnating, they don't use that term because that word is not found in the New Testament. But the only illustrative, wording, phrases that describe the act of what is incarnation, these verses say that Jesus incarnated, right? And the point in that is that I theologically teach, as the Bible states, Jesus existed, may have had a different name, but he was in the heavens before he came to earth. He's the one, not God, who incarnated here. And this heavenly Jesus was the so-called firstborn of all creation. I have argued that it's possible Jesus was just simply the first cosmic human, the first human made amidst the cosmos, and that would, in him being regarded as son of God, because God would have made, if God chose any type of image to be representative of whatever, and he chose the human form and liked the human form for whatever particular reason, even though God is formless and has no image, if he wanted to create something with a certain image to be representative of whatever, that's how, in part we're made in the image of God also, because of other attributes and qualities we are given from God, not just the appearance bodily. But if God out there creating all these life forms in the cosmos one day, or maybe he created it first of all the other creations, he at some point God would have been like, okay, I want to make the human form. And we're told in the New Testament Jesus was the firstborn of all the creation, the heavenly creation. So if all that's true, then Jesus would have been the heavenly Son of God, like I argue theologically. He would have headed the first of everything. He'd be the spiritual, the heavenly high priest. He would be, the great intermediary and mediator between God and his creation. All of this makes perfect sense theologically. It's a very plausible scenario. And it's also what the Bible tells us. And Jesus was that one who is living in the heavens, who came down to this earth and incarnated to serve his role and purpose of life as Jesus Christ. Now, Jesus himself told us that he's not from this world, he's from another world. He is from above. He's returning back up from where he came. There's many verses that talk about Jesus. There's other verses where Jesus is relaying wisdom to us. So wisdom from Jesus that says that we are sojourners upon this earth, and we're not of this earth. I'm not quoting that last one because I can't remember the exact words. But it's revealed to us as well that, we're only here in this mortal life, going through this temporarily. I'm not here to get on a deep theological discourse for people. But Jesus came from another world, and we're sojourners upon this earth, living this mortal lifespan here as some type of sentence or term. Okay? Now, that's part of the great reveal. And he left his heavenly abode, he left his heavenly, body and all of that, even though it looked human. But he left his higher, more powerful body to become like one of us from start to finish. So a mortal birth and a mortal death, to show that it is possible for humans to be good and upstanding and righteous in defiance of all odds. He showed us that it was possible, and that being righteous, you are rewarded by a God who clearly does exist, who has power over life and death, because that God is the one who resurrected Jesus and brought him back to life in front of many witnesses. Where Jesus at that point no longer had the mortal body, but the immortal body, which still looked human, still could eat physical food, like Jesus revealed. He said, I'm not a spirit, I'm not a ghost. Ghosts can eat fish like I'm doing here with you, Jesus said. But at the same time, that body could disappear. It could it was a supernatural type body. To us, supernatural, but it's just a higher science, physics or whatnot, right? So I like to call that the paradise body. That's the body you can take to paradise, whereas the mortal body cannot enter paradise. So, that's the gist on Jesus, but he came from another world as well. So, the Bible has been saying all these deep points of disclosure from day one. And the end of days is due this year, next year, or the year after, either 25, 26, 27. At some point in these next few years, we are biblically due, and I go through the evidence for it in my End Days book. All my books are available on Amazon, by the way. But there's more than enough evidence and tangible things taking place in the world that have never occurred before that also confirm the biblical prophecy time period. So my point is that we're due to have certain things taking place in this world. And right now what we're getting is a ramping up of all these people believing these delusions that aliens made us. So that's why I clarified before, like there is truth in some of these things, but the deluded ones believing the stories of the narratives that are delusion, they're not believing things that are accurate or correct. They're believing things that are not factual and incorrect. So, while yes, technically aliens did create us, even though it sounds crazy, that is what the Bible says. They did so for God, and that's what the delusion won't tell you. The delusional narrative says that aliens made us. Now they'll pick and choose which type. They'll say reptilians, greys, or the Nordic types. It's always going to be one of these three types that people pick. And there's groups that believe either group. There's groups of people that believe either one of those three extraterrestrial groups created us, and they'll argue for what they believe, right? But and whilst the Nordic ones look human, they could be the good angels. At the same time, you can't judge somebody or something by its appearance. Something that looks scary, maybe a reptilian, looks spooky and scary, but it might be a very righteous being. You might look at a beautiful Palladian Nordic looking human and think, wow, they're so beautiful, but they might be very evil on the inside, right? So you cannot judge a book by its cover. You have to judge it by its content, right? And its behavior and by its content. That's what you have to do. So but these people believe that these various groups created us. Now, from the biblical perspective, it doesn't matter which group created us. It was obviously the ones that looked human because we were made in their image, right? That's just common sense, not rocket science, right? So it couldn't have been the Greys or the reptilians. It had to be at least the Palladic Nordic human looking types that made us. But we don't really need to fuss or care about which group created us. That's irrelevant because it was all done as part of God's creation, for God. Like God was the big boss over all this. Like the little assembly line workers doing the work, that's irrelevant. It's the guy who runs the company, God, right? So God is the one that matters in all this, and it was for God. So it does the little pitiful, minuscule, miniature details don't really matter to someone who's religiously inclined. God was in charge of everything that transpired. He used some beings to create us. Big whoop. You see my point? But the deluded people, they're in a very dangerous position because they're not being told that what they are being told is that the Bible is a lie, that these beings were seen over the past millennia and certain people were deluded by it and came up with religion. So what is a delusion is the narrative saying that the Bible is all a lie. It was aliens that made us and God's not part of the equation. That's a very dangerous delusion because when the end of days arrives, it is the judgment day and we will all be judged. And if you're not worthy, you're going to be left behind here while the earth gets pelted by meteors, asteroids, and whatever else is occurring. So that's why it's a very dangerous delusion. People really have to get things right. In UFOlogy today, there's a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of there's some truths out there, but unfortunately, it's in a huge trash heap of deception. That's the problem. And me personally, I don't believe anybody who's had regression hypnosis because at the end of the day, nobody, as an external witness to this, knows whether any of that is actually true. Even the person undergoing the hypnosis, the victim, so to speak, they don't even know if it's true because they don't remember it until they go through the hypnosis. And it's been proven that you can create false memories, right? Whilst it is totally possible that some people who are not being deceptive, not lying, and did experience something cannot remember. And I'm open to believe that maybe they could be tricked during this hypnosis session. They will just psychologically enable them, they'll really just, because of the placebo effect, just believe that they're able to remember it and unlock their own memories. In other words, they're being tricked into remembering what they could have remembered themselves the whole time. And they might actually remember things they couldn't before, and these may be real, accurate events. But none of us on the outside as external witnesses can know whether that's the truth or not, right? With every different individual case. And like I said, even the individual victims going through the hypnosis, even a lot of the time, they don't know whether those things really happened or not. So at the end of the day, my point is, if you're trying to be not a skeptic, but someone who carefully examines the material before you believe it, I don't count any hypnosis therapy information, derived information, as factual, right? So we're talking about disclosure, we're talking about truth and deception, right? Something's either true or it's not. Okay? And we're not talking about is there intent to deceive. That's irrelevant. It's either true or it's not true. It's true or deception. If you're believing something that's not true, it's deceiving you, right? And that makes it deception. So it does come down to truth and deception. So the one truth is that we'll have no way of knowing whether any of these hypnosis sessions yielded anything accurate or truthful. And because we'll never know, there's no point going through it all, sifting through it all, and all of that. You could hear the most fantastic story that seems very captivating, like, wow, this is amazing. And a lot of them are intimidating. But at the end of the day, you'll have no way of ever knowing whether it's factual or not. And what that does is what you see in the UFO community today in UFOlogy is a smorgasbord, an oversaturation of jargon nonsense where things that just can't be proven. And there's so much of it. In human nature, you just want to keep seeing things and hearing new things. And there's so many channels putting out content, and you have so much jargon out there that's not even factual things, and it's just oversaturating the minds of everybody, and that pollutes the minds, and it pollutes the mind, and it alters what you might deduce or analyze as being yay or nay. It'll influence you and subconsciously influence you because you're oversaturated with all these different things that you're considering, right? But like I said, all the information gleaned from any hypnosis therapy session, that's unfortunately it has to be counted as irrelevant. And when you cut all of that material out, a vast majority of what people believe is out the window. There's not that many, but there's a fair number of like military and ex-authority witnesses, people who had higher positions, and they're whistleblowers or witnesses. This is great testimony. There's been a lot of very good figures without naming names over the many decades. But even still, very little of what they say can be truly verified. Now, when you're trying, like I said, not that you're trying to be a skeptic, but when you're trying to truly analyze so that you know what to believe and what you shouldn't believe, and if you're not sure about something, then don't believe in it, right? Keep it on the side burner until you can further understand it. But people aren't living like that. They're oversaturating their minds because just human nature, we want to keep pulling things in, like I said, and there's so many channels out there putting out content, and so many people desperate to make content, so many people desperate to watch it, that you just get this flotsam, this jargon, this huge oversaturation, a huge trash pile, essentially, with little gemstones of truth within it. Um, so, what is tangible proof that UFOs are real? Well, I've seen UFOs. Millions of people have seen UFOs. There's thousands of videos of them out there, real, genuine ones, even before AI emerged. Um, they're definitely real. They're definitely here, right? And everybody's always waiting for government disclosure. But ironically, the biggest points that pertain to disclosure and why the need for secrecy for it all stem from truths that are revealed in the Bible. Like I said before, yes, aliens made us. There's aliens that look like us. There's also bad aliens, like Revelation 12 goes into the cosmology I was saying earlier, but sidetracked, where the bad ones were kicked out of the heavens, like First Enoch says, and they were imprisoned here. So these beings, obviously, if they're here on the earth, they're probably in the oceans or underground. And there's even, there's tales from different mythologies around the world that line up with that. Even in the Bible, there's allusions to certain beings being under the ground. But using the logic, they're bound to this earth and we don't see them on the surface. So they're probably just, the logic points towards a logical place for them to hide out or have bases would be the ocean, or underground. And in UFOlogy, and even from witnesses, and even from abductees, from all sorts of different types of witnesses and whistleblowers, they say that there's bases underground and in the ocean. So we could see that, what different cultures have said must be true. There's good reason to believe. I can't prove any of it, but from certain witnesses and people who've talked about this, or the whistleblowers themselves, there's definitely bases in the ocean. Whether they're mobile or fixed, I don't know, but certain beings have bases in the ocean. Um, and there's most likely ones under the ground. So this would be a good reason for secrecy, right? It would freak out humankind to find out that there's civilizations in the oceans and underground. That would freak people out. So I can understand that. That's one good reason, right? But again, this is revealed through religion. Like that awesome truth was believed by ancient peoples around the world, and it's actually a biblical truth, and we're just learning now that it is true. These beings, like the Bible says, some of them are very powerful, very intelligent. They're able to influence our thoughts. This is what the Bible warns us: says we don't just have battles. It's implying with flesh and blood, but with spiritual powers in the high places. Um, and how Satan and his messengers can transform themselves into messengers of light to look like an angel of light. They're very powerful beings, whether through just their biology or through technology or a combination of both. They're very powerful. They can be bewildering. They can be very deceptive and fooling to people. And like we learned from Genesis and First Enoch, they look like us. They lusted over us, and they wanted to reproduce with us. And when they did, they bore the Nephilim, and that's part of the main reason why the Great Flood came, because the Nephilim, the fallen angels, their progeny, just tainted mankind. First Enoch revealed that the angels who became the fallen angels. Uh, I think there was 200 out of six. There were 600 angels, and 200, one third of them fell. If I have the numbers, if I remember the numbers correctly. So there weren't all that many, right? There's only about 200 of them. But the very what they did was they interbred with people, with Earth humans, which was forbidden. And the other things that they did that were forbidden, that got caught, that caused them to get fallen down, cast down, and labeled as fallen angels. That was teaching mankind, these new sciences, arts, whatever it might be, astrology or astronomy and mathematics and whatever it is, like all the different various art forms, and even learning makeup and all this and that. There are various different things in different categories. How to make weapons of war was another one. So they got in trouble for sharing that stuff with mankind. Now, if we fast forward to our current day, what is the wisdom in the UFO community, in UFOlogy, revealed? Well, it says that certain extraterrestrials are trying to hybridize and breed with us. This would abductees claim, witnesses, whistleblowers, some of them claim that, right? But that's what the Bible says they did. So it's no surprise to me. The fallen angels did that before. That's what obviously they're always trying to do. So it's no surprise, right? So another example of how the Bible wisdom revealed these things, and it is what is true point of disclosure. And that's another one of the reasons that these awesome truths, it would be hard for governments to come out and admit them, because it's taking a religious stance, for one, right? It's not, people always try to push the concept that Christians would lose their faith if they were told aliens or UFOs are real. People always say that. It's a stereotypical statement and belief, but I don't think that's true. A lot of the ignorant Christians might, unfortunately, but I don't think the average Christian would. I think a lot of Christians they're not ignorant, and they're aware God could have created other life forms, at least, right? Whether they believe them to be theologically the angels or not is irrelevant, right? Um, but anyways, I don't want to sidetrack too much, because then I'll forget my train of thought. But the very same thing that those beings did back then, they're doing now. So they're trying to interbreed. We've gotten technology from them, military type technology, which could, some of which could be used for weapons or machines of war. Um, with technology means different sciences, higher sciences that we didn't know. So they're doing the same things that they did before. So it's no surprise. But again, that's a true point of disclosure, but it's actually biblically revealed. And it's also one of the things kept secret that we probably won't ever get with actual disclosure. Right? So all the biggest points of true disclosure are truths that are already revealed in the biblical wisdom. That's one of the main underlying points here. Right? So all the things that the governments are scared to admit to the populaces of Earth is what the Bible has revealed. Doesn't take that much wisdom to get it from the Bible. It just takes some common sense and a drop of logic, and well, for you to apply logic and use your common sense and actually read the Bible, and you'll see it for yourself. It's not rocket science, but apparently most people don't even do that. Um, so, but a lot of people now in the UFO community are believing, like I was saying earlier, that aliens created them, but because they're keeping the Bible and God out of the picture, they're just going down the path that is a path from the fallen angels, like I said earlier. That's what's happening. And they're believing that aliens made us. God has nothing to do with it. We thought God was real because we saw these aliens who were so big and powerful, big, strong, powerful, and we thought they must be gods. Right? This very ignorant, narrow-minded concept is unfortunately what's deluding a lot of people in the UFO community right now. It just really, really is. And it's some powerful stuff because, even at me enjoying UFO topic, I like to listen, read, research, and learn, right? But in doing so, you get all that jargon coming in. It's oversaturates, like I was saying before. So when I'm watching and listening to all this information, there's all, like I said, it can go against your subconscious, because even me having my firm religious stance, it has me questioning things at times. And it's like, well, what if the aliens did make us, and we were mistaken about God, and it makes me worry, and all this and that there. But then I come back full circle to, well, no, well, this was already talked about in the Bible. It warns us not to be fooled by that stuff. The ancient peoples wrote the biblical books 2,500 years ago plus. They knew about this to warn us about it, right? That's something you have to remember. So we are warned well in advance by the biblical authors. Thousands of years ago, we are warned about this and this type of heavens to earth interaction. We have plenty of warning about it. There's no reason for us to claim like we don't know. It's because they mistaught in the churches and they pulled the wool over people's eyes. And even when we started to gain understanding about the presence of UFOs in the 1940s and such, because they were very rare before that. But in the 40s and 50s is when UFO activity increased on the Earth. And I talk about it in my videos and my books, but I don't have time to elaborate here. Right? But when we gained more knowledge and awareness about them, that's when people just started believing in all these crazy different theories, because a lot of people were very Christian in America, for example, just picking one country out. 40s and 50s, everybody was a neat and tidy Christian family, watched their P's and Q's. The kids are always polite and all that. They would go to church on the weekend, on Sunday or whatnot. They'd be very strict, and most of them be pretty pious people. You couldn't say that about society anymore. But even while those people, by outward appearances, appeared more, calm, collected, and pious than the average person today, when they went to church, they weren't being taught about this biblical reality. So because of all those decades, you're led to having these overzealous fellow Christians who demonize what are the angels. That's the problem. And then now we've got the other group out there who are cutting God out of the picture, the Bible out of the picture, and basically bowing down to aliens. That's going to leave both communities, the religious community and the non-religious community. It's going to leave them both in a bad position to be strongly deluded by what is deception. You get some nefarious minded beings who come down one day. Maybe they'll pull off a big stunt and show off to people or to a country, and they'll say, "Hey, yeah, we made you guys. We're your gods. We're your creators." And they'll tell you God isn't real and all that. That could hypothetically happen, and if it does, people could be really, really fooled. But the first group who are basically, so to speak, bow down and worship them right away are going to be that group, like I said, that 60% of people in the UFO community who believe these delusions. They're going to be primed. They're going to be primed ready to bow down to that and to accept it as what they have believed. That's the danger. And it wouldn't take many beings to do this. If even just one or a few nefarious minded beings came down. They might even be playing a prank, be like, hey, let's go pull a prank on these demons. Let's just go down there, show off some of our cool tech, tell them that we're their gods, we created them, the Bible's a lie. They could spend 5 minutes talking to the people, and then you'd have hundreds of millions of people brainwashed within a day. You know what I mean? And it might just be a few random beings just want to pull a prank. You know what I mean? The point in me saying that is you could have such deep level of deception, salvation bruising deception, just from a silly act like that. You don't need to have a fleet of evil beings arriving to brainwash people. It'll just take one or a few. Um, so, the people in that big 60% or whatever it is group who are believing these delusions, they have to be careful for things like that. Because one day what they want to believe, what they're choosing to believe might come to their face. They could have an abduction experience, a one-on-one, their own encounter. They might get abducted one night, or an alien might just come to them. A nefarious alien, he could just show them something, tell them something, and that person will lose their mind or lose their salvation by just being like, oh yeah, okay, well, I don't believe in God anymore. I'll just believe you guys are the gods. These are the dangers that go along with it. You're leaving yourself open for massive, rapid deception like that. And at the end of the day, that is just a delusion. Even though, yes, beings, extraterrestrials, certain ones did create us or had a part in our creation, that doesn't discount God out of the equation. In fact, it was the books of God that told us that was the scenario in Earth's history. You know what I mean? That's the irony here. So if you have the common sense and the learned wisdom, you're not going to get duped by these delusions. Okay? Uh, which came first, the bird or the egg? You can never escape that, because in order to have a bird, it has to hatch from an egg. But in order to have an egg, you have to have a bird to lay an egg. You can never start with one. So, like in nature, which one came first? I always have atheists for some silly reason. I've had at least 3 different atheists say, "Oh, you're silly because birds evolved from reptiles or whatever." I'm like, no, they're the ones out of the ballpark floating out in the twilight zone because they don't comprehend common sense. Question, right? You need an egg to have a bird. You need a bird to have an egg. You cannot just have one first. So that proves creation by a creator, because one of them had to be created first. You cannot just have nature produce an egg for a bird or a bird for an egg. It's not going to happen. It's logically impossible. It's one of the ultimate paradoxes that proves God must be real. Okay? So the aliens, even if aliens did make us, what made the aliens? Okay, for heaven's sake, you know what I mean? But these deluded ones, they don't even think that. They're happy just cutting God out of the picture, because at the end of the day, it's only the weaker souled people, the less intelligent, who would ditch God like that for this silly fabricated narrative that doesn't even make common sense, right? A deception. It's only the weak in mind, the weak in soul, the weak in goodness. Those weaklings are the ones who would fall victim to it. So unfortunately, that's the other side of the coin. There, you might ask why so many people. You know what I mean? They need to step up. They need to strengthen and not be so weak, be so gullible, right? It's irrelevant if any extraterrestrials created us. It's absolutely irrelevant. What created the extraterrestrials? Thank you. Right. So what created the planet that they live on? You can't get something from nothing. The Big Bang is impossible. The Big Bang is just a theory. It's not proven whatsoever. They've observed things in reality and try to come up with a fairy tale based around what they see. That's how the science is working. Okay? So they can't explain the paradox of where all these different things, time, space, and matter, came from before the Big Bang. Right? So they say that everything was condensed down to a singular point. Where did the everything come from? You know what I mean? Like all of those impossible paradoxes, the only solution is a super dimensional God who existed, and he's greater than all these dimensions that he created. That's the only thing that makes sense. He's super dimensional, is beyond dimension. So he's beyond time, space, and matter, right? That's what makes him omnipotent and would make him omnipotent. So an omnipotent supernatural God like that makes perfect sense, who did all the, dimensional and physical creation and everything. That makes perfect sense, and that's the only solution. But the scary thing is that a lot of people in the UFO community are chopping God out of the equation. So what they're doing is they're looking at it from an ignorant perspective, whereby they chop out the only logical solution for all the greatest mysteries of the universe in exchange for what is completely blindfolded pseudoscience, believing that, oh, aliens made us, and all of that silliness. So I don't believe that there's going to be a false rapture or anything like that there. Now, the Bible doesn't say that there will be one, but if there was to be one for whatever reason, or if when the end days arrive, the bad guys have a short period of time in which to just pull off some tricks on people just for kicks, they could very well at some point, you know what I mean, before then or at that final moments of contention, they could go and abduct people and trick them into thinking, hey, we're your gods, we're coming to take you. You know what I mean? And but along with that, they'd have to tell you that God isn't real. So it's happening to people now. People are being abducted, and they relay in their own abduction experiences certain things that the aliens tell them. And this is what I mean. This is all part of the deception and the lies, that the unfactual statements that have become beliefs that are floating around like flotsam and hypersaturating people's minds in the UFO community. And there's so many people telling stories like this that's really just pulling people away from what is the logical truth. That God is real. He created everything. There's good beings, there's bad beings. The reason why most of these aliens hide from us, they don't frequently or heavily interact, again, lines up with what the Bible says. There are rules against interaction. I mean, clearly, because the angels got punished for interacting with us, and the ones who became fallen angels were punished for interacting with us. Certain levels of interaction we can ascertain from that logically show that those are forbidden things. You're not allowed to hybridize with the humans. You're not allowed to give, dangerous technologies to lower life forms, or, less evolved, or, whether society or technologically or biologically less evolved beings. You're not allowed to give them stuff that's above their level. So we can see that there's laws of non-interference. So whilst there is some interaction on a vast whole, there isn't really interaction. But there is a presence. They are here. They are flying around. They are monitoring us. They are studying us, observing us, monitoring us. Um, Sometimes they abduct people and study the people. A lot of abductions show that, and some of the credible ones like Travis Walton, they're actually, neutral or positive, these beings, and that they help people, or they just do a, medical checkup on people, or sometimes they might cure an illness, or do something to help a person. So a lot of experiences that people have are actually positive. And this is what you would see in light of what the Bible says is the scenario. That these beings are watchers. They're here. Their job here is not to interfere. It's not really to interact unless necessary. And they're just here to watch, to govern over in a sense, and to watch over. And maybe also to protect Earth from nefarious forces or from calamities, perhaps, or something. But that's what they're here for. And other events, like if God wants to use the messengers for some particular thing, he might commission some of the messengers to go do a particular thing. But that's the real extent of, according to the Bible, the interaction that takes place. Anything outside of that would be, more of interfering with humankind. So we could see this tangibly. Like, the aliens are definitely real. They're here. The UFOs are flying around. Even if some of them are of human nations, there's definitely extraterrestrials here. Okay, so if they're here, but they're not really interacting with us, right? They're not on a vast or public scale. They're not. And they're not really interfering with us. They are behind closed doors on a smaller scale, yes, but that's fallen angels, as I discussed before, right? So if that is the tangible reality that we're living, there has to be a reasoning and an explanation for it. Well, the biblical reasoning is already told to us, and it makes perfect sense, because they're watchers and they're doing what they're supposed to do, watch. The ones who are trying to hybridize with us and trying to do this and that's bad, they're the bad ones, and or they're ones who are going to be punished for doing those bad things, that, breaking the laws of non-interference. So again, the Bible has given us the great points of the sensitive disclosure that the governments are afraid to reveal. Um, but at the end of the day, I just think the public, it's more damaging to a government to have the populace making up conspiracies. It's a danger to everybody, to society and to the government members, and to a government as a government, to by having all these secrets, and especially for so long, right? 80 years. um, what it has caused observably is pockets of society becoming like anarchists, rebelling and coming up with these crazy anti-government conspiracies. And a lot of that stuff is pure baloney, but there's a lot of people who really believe it, and that spreads like dominoes. And at the end of the day, what you're having is a society that really doesn't like and distrusts its government. um, Not because the government's keeping secrets, but because the population thinks that these things they're hearing and believing are true, and the government does all these bad things. So what I think would be in, like, for example, the American government's interest would be, look, give the people disclosure. Because unless there's something I haven't thought of, like a reason for secrecy that I haven't thought of, and I've thought of everything, even wild concepts that might be out of the box, right? Or more daunting or intimidating concepts. So it's not like it probably wouldn't be something I haven't at least considered, right? But maybe they have some other reason that I haven't thought of for secrecy. And maybe if I heard it, it'd be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that's pretty important. Maybe it's a more mundane reason, like because of some catching effect, for the sake of national security, they can't mention it. Maybe because it's something to do with another country or some law or rule. Maybe some stipulation type thing like that is causing secrecy in certain things, right? Um, but at the end of the day, I think if the government, for example, the American government, if they gave the people disclosure in admitting big, bold things, maybe the government could still keep some things secret. But if they gave a big, bold disclosure, I think what the government's done is they've feared the public response for so long that they've kept the secrecy, unless, like I said, it's for other security reasons or whatever, right? Um, but if it's because, at least in part, because they fear what society will do as a response to being given disclosure, I think that whatever negative response or negativity would result as that response from society, I think that would be less of a negative response than what has happened now with millions and millions or tens of millions or even yeah tens of millions of Americans, for example, believing terribly of the government, or believing that the government does nefarious, dark projects and all these crazy conspiracy theories. So my point is, I think it would be in the government's interest to give people disclosure, because you're showing the people, hey, we do care about you. We're here working for you. We're trying to make society what society is, and make your country a country for you to live in. We're here for you in that sense, and we work for you in that sense. And we're here to protect you. You know what I mean? We're here to govern you and judge you as a people. The government, by giving a powerful disclosure, I think they would achieve these understandings with the population. And a lot of dissidents would probably warm up to the government and realize, I was wrong in believing these delusional conspiracies. I think it would be a great benefit to the government. Yeah, you'll probably get some people at the beginning who have a response and freaking out maybe that aliens are real, right? But that's going to be temporary. It's not going to be permanent. That's going to be one hump that rises up and dips back down, but it's going to have far more benefits and positive results at the end of it. You know what I mean? And if America does have some nice advanced technology or craft, then maybe that would be a prime opportune time to flex that, give a good disclosure and say, hey, look, yeah, if they did back engineer certain things or whatever, then they can flaunt it and show off their latest fleet of ships. And, that will show the other nations of the world, the adversarial nations, not that anybody should be adversaries. We should all can we all get along like friends? But it was so the adversary nations that, oh yeah, well, America's got this fleet of these supercraft. Oh wow, okay, they know what they're doing. You know what I mean? It just seems to me like it would be positive, positive, positive for the governments to give disclosure. So I don't know why they keep everything so secret. You know, I give the government credit that they're very intelligent people. Not every single one, obviously, but you have scientists and everything involved with these things that are allegedly being kept secret about aliens. And I think that, um, one sec, losing my voice from talking for so long. Need to drink water as I go. But anyways, my point is that I think they'd have a lot to benefit if they gave disclosure. Again, trust in society. All these dissidents would dissolve. The people would have so much more respect for the government. It would increase order. It would help reduce chaos. You know, and if some people are going to respond, like I said, and flip out, that's just going to be one initial hump that will go down. This will be nothing but benefits across the board. They could flex off their super advanced craft or technology to the world. So I think it's benefits all around. Oh, that's what I was saying. Okay, so it is important. I remember what it was. So I give the government credit, thinking there's intelligent people and scientists who have, if in the scenario that it's a dark, intimidating reason for the secrecy, like some aspect about the UFO alien presence is so dark and intimidating, that's why they wouldn't dread revealing it to the people to ruin their lives. There's people out there that try to spin the story like that's the case. You know, I often wonder it. You know, is it possible that they've been told something or shown something by some of these beings to lead them to believe that they harvest people or something crazy? A lot of people believe that stuff, like Linda Moulton Howe and others, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I can't remember that. Oh, Bill Tompkins, William Tompkins. Others have alleged to this as well. And that's the godless scenario. Like I said, the big field of delusion, which cuts God out of the picture and shows us as being created by aliens, you know, for some purpose to the aliens. But what if, I often wonder, like in hypothetical scenario, like what if some beings, and it's probably happened, and this allegedly actually has, if you look at some of the alleged accounts, but it's probably happened where some beings told them, hey, look, we made you, or we use you for this or that. And it so intimidated the intelligent scientists that they thought there's no way we could tell this dark reality, like an archon gnostic gnosis type scenario. There's no way that they could reveal that to the people. But I don't believe such a nefarious scenario is possible. I've got videos where I talk about this. I made one not that long ago, in the last few weeks, or in the last month or two, maybe. Why I really don't believe that, you know, we're in a dark scenario. Like, for example, William Tompkins and many others, they believe this dulce mythos type concept, which entails that bad beings created us, bad beings use us, right? So we're just created to be used by these bad beings. That's a very dark. It would take all the joy out of your life if that was, you know, told to you. But they might believe it to be true. But I don't believe that to be true, for very good reasons, right? As I've said in my various videos, I don't have time to get into everything today, right? This video is already long enough as it is. But I don't believe we're in that type of scenario. So go watch my video where I talk about that. So I'll end this video now. How long has it been? 1 hour? That's long enough. But yeah, no, I think it would benefit the governments to give disclosure. Be a definite, or maybe they're being told by the beings that they're not allowed to reveal stuff. I mean, that's another possibility too. Um, but I mean, come on. I mean, if they fly their ships around everywhere, where people aren't that stupid. We see their UFOs flying around. We know they're real. They're here. I mean, why not at least tell us a reason why you're here? You know what I mean? So I don't think the aliens are forcing the people to like they forbid humans from giving disclosure, especially when you got aliens abducting people and telling them stories. No, no. So obviously, once again, logic prevails there, and we can see that it's not the aliens commanding secrecy, um, as to their existence and presence, at least. But yeah, so anyways, I'll end on the note that there's apparently a big event coming. A lot of good reasons to believe this. And on top of that, I very well could have seen it in my two dreams that I relayed. So you could check that in my dreams or even the UFO playlists, um, with the big mothership coming here. I had that dream last year. That was absolutely mind blowing, crazy dream. Very intimidating, even to this day. While I'm on this topic, I'll mention this now too. I had a video testimony about this dream, but I'm pretty sure I took it down because I thought it was just a little too far out there. But one night I had a very vivid dream. Very vivid, so crisp and vivid. I can picture it now like a photograph in my mind, better than a lot of moments of my life. And this dream, it was so real. I was in another place, country, world. I don't know where it was, but it was utterly, vividly real, like crisp and vivid. And there were like, it was like outside. There was grass. There was these plants, but all these plants look different. Now, I'm kind of a nerd, so I have books on plants and insects and birds and this and that. And so I'm the type of person, I don't know everything out there, but I know a fair bit of what's out there, even around the world. And a lot of these plants just look different. So it felt like it was Earth-like, but just in a different place, like maybe in a different Earth. And wherever it was, I don't know. But there was grass, and there were these buildings that are kind of like barns. I think they were like, it doesn't matter what color they were, maybe like a dark blue, but not big red earth barns. Um, there's a bunch of people, maybe a dozen people or something like that around, and there's some stuff going on, nothing much, just humble, normal daily life stuff. And I was there walking around, and I'm sitting there looking at these plants thinking, wow, that's beautiful. It's obviously, it looks dead real, right? I can still kind of picture them too, like these tall flowers. They have, like leaves and all of that. They're not just flowers, but like a plant that makes flowers. Looks different from anything I'd ever seen before. And there are these little insects, these very colorful, like beetles, that crawled up along the side of this barn, like right in front of me. And they were like a fire cone orangey red, super glossy, like high gloss, like on that like candy coat car paint, the one they call candy coat, where it looks like dripping glossy candy. Beautiful, like fire cone orangey red. And they're about the size of a nickel or a penny, and they were just running around on the barn, and they were close to my face. So I looked at these bugs, and I was just like, what kind of bugs are these? Like, I have books on bugs, like encyclopedias on insects and bugs and spiders and this and that. I've seen virtually every bug out there. Not every single one. I don't know everything, right? But I've seen a lot. And in my dream, I was looking at these bugs, and I was like, what in the world are these? I've never seen a bug like this. Um, and even in the dream, I was thinking, like, where am I? Like, I've never seen this before. um, I wasn't with family or friends. I was just with people. I don't know who they are. I think I seem to know them somewhat in my dream. um, but at some point along the line, while I was taking in this somewhat otherworldly ecology around me, an environment, one or two people arrived, and they're like, oh, hey guys, hey people, whatever. They're talking to some of their friends, and I just overheard them. And they were saying that because they were like standing in a little circle, like right next to me where I was at this one point. And the people who arrived were like, oh, yeah, Seon and Draco are coming. The way he said it kind of came across like they were names of people who are coming over maybe for a dinner party or something. But I don't often hear such poignant, like names or certain keywords, like like it doesn't matter what the word was, right? Because cyan, cotton candy, cheese, doesn't matter, uba luba. But I don't often hear something where it's so poignant that I can like vividly, crisply remember it. when he when I heard the person say that Cyan and Draco are coming, it was like so vivid. So I remembered it. I told myself in the dream, because I usually dream lucid, I was like, oh, I'm going to remember this, and made note to memorize it. And I do remember it. So I tried, sir. Everybody knows Draco is a constellation, right? That's not rocket science. Even in UFO lore, not to say who knows whether it's true or not. Supposedly the reptilians come from Draco, but I mean, why would they? I mean, this sounds too much like a human concoction, right? That'd be like saying that what do bear looking aliens come from Ursa Major? I mean, come on, right? But anyways, what if reptilians do come from Draco or came from Draco originally? Maybe that's true. I'm just saying, throwing it out there as a possible scenario, a hypothesis, a hypothetical scenario, sorry. Um, what if what that person was telling me, or how the message was, covertly relayed to me in the dream was by me overhearing this person saying that Scion and Draco are coming. Maybe that was meant to be a message. So I thought, okay, well, if it's relevant, then something is coming from Draco, like the forces of Draco or something that was from Draco is coming here. What could that be? And when I woke up, I was sitting there thinking, is it the Draco reptilians? That would be interesting. And then I thought, well, what is cyan? So I looked cyan. So I looked it up. Besides the color, the name of the color cyan, because that's basically what the word sounded like. It also sounds like something from that show Dragon Ball Z. Um, and the cyan were a race of human-like extraterrestrials from another planet. Thought that was interesting. They're actually the main stars of the show. They're cyans, or some of them are cyans, Seiyan. Or something like that. But they can change their form or something. So I searched for a star system or a star or something celestial that sounded like cyan, but I couldn't. As of this day, I can't really find anything that seems like like relevant or useful at all or anything. So I don't know what that means, but I just wanted to throw that out there because maybe I didn't look hard enough. Maybe there is another star system or something called cyan, or it sounds like cyan phonetically, but it could be written a different way. I tried thinking outside the box in my searching, but didn't find anything so far. But if it turns out cyan is a star or something astronomical, that would be pretty interesting. Um, but the reason I mentioned that dream is because I took that testimony video down. And I can't remember the timing when I had that dream, but last year I had my first ever dream where I saw like a full blown uh, like UFO. I'd only ever had one dream before where I saw a UFO, and it was a saucer. I've described that a bunch of times. So it was part of my end days dream. But outside of that one, that's an anomaly. Last year is the first time, really speaking, you could say, where I saw UFOs. Um, and it was like this giant mothership. And when the beings came down, one of them walked right up to me, and it didn't look like stereotypical reptilian. I can't explain it. It's not like anything on this earth, but for lack of a better term, maybe reptilian. Um, it looked pretty cool, a little human-ish, but clearly not human. But it didn't look like a lizard or a snake or anything like that. And I don't know if they're here to do something bad or good. Excuse me. I gotta get going. But it just makes me wonder, like, did I have that dream because that's going to happen? And before that dream, 1 month before that dream, I had my first dream where I ever saw an alien. And in that dream, the alien was flying in a little spherical drone type UFO, hovering off the ground and flying invisibly around all these people. I could see it, but nobody else could see it. And when I pointed at it, it it must have perturbed it or whatever, and it started floating towards me, and it was freaking me out. So I have a video up about that dream on my dreams playlist. And then 1 month later, I had the mothership arrival dream, and in that dream, I saw a different type of alien, or an alien face to face. So the first dream was the first time I'd ever seen an alien in any of my dreams, and my second dream with the mothership was the first time I ever seen an alien, like face to face, right? because the little spherical drone thing that it was flying in the first, that the alien was flying in the first dream, was transparent. That's why I could see it. Forgot to mention that part here. Um, in this, so that's a little different. It was at somewhat of a distance, not that far away from you, uh, 20 to 50 feet or whatever. It varied because it was flying around slowly. So I didn't get a face to face, like crystal clear, like unobstructed vision until the second dream. I don't think they were the same type of being. I think it was like a one of the type of like grays who was flying that little drone. But that spherical drone dream occurred around the time or just before or whatever when all this mystery UFO drones started showing up around the world, and including in America. So it made me wonder if that was like some type of cryptic allusion to that, because it was a small sphere, a drone-like UFO. It wasn't some big spaceship. It wasn't even a flying saucer. It was a it was transparent. I could see inside of it, and it was basically a cockpit. And the being was sitting there, and it looked so cool, and it was just flying around. It had a goldish tint, but it was transparent. And it was watching the people, flying around them, watching the people, but they couldn't see it. The people were oblivious to it. So it is like a cryptic allusion to the drone scenario. Like the drones are flying around, but the people don't. But the people did see them on Earth, but in essence, they don't know who's piloting them. Their people are oblivious, and I don't know. I see connections between that dream and the drone flap, or whatever you want to call, when everybody started to see those UFO drones. I see a connection there. So is there going to be a connection to the second dream where we get the great arrival? Well, like I've said in many other videos, you have the big event that's supposed to happen. This is referenced by numerous different whistleblowers and witnesses over many, many decades, going back to 1989. And I've got a video where I list them out and go through them, including Amari Rivera, who I believe was from Brazil in 1989. So there is a big event coming. And other sources have confirmed this as well. So there is going to be a big event coming, and it's probably going to be the end of days when we're going to see this big arrival. We got Three Eye Atlas doing all this crazy stuff, looking otherworldly. That's just a sign, even though that's may just be a space rock or a weird type of space rock. Nobody knows what it is. So everybody could just frig off. You know what I mean? Even science is scratching their heads about it. It keeps doing strange things that aren't normal. Um, but even if Three Eye Atlas turns out to be not a spaceship, not aliens, it's just a space thing and just leaves our solar system, even if that happens, point is, it was definitely something strange. Like, it was an odd event for something like that to come out of nowhere and go on a journey through our solar system and then back out. That's pretty cool. It only happens once in probably, I don't know, thousands of years or something. An uncanny, unusual event is an unknown extraterrestrial interstellar visitor from another star system that made its way here. Whether it's a rock or not is irrelevant. It's the symbolism and the essence behind it all. Strange things coming. You know what I mean? Unknown things coming. And if that one could show up, then something else crazy could show up. Anyways, folks, take care. God bless. Good to see. Yeah, people have to, because too many people are just going way off the deep end and becoming deluded by this stuff. Um, millions of people are already believing that these aliens made them and that God's not part of the picture. But that's what I was saying earlier. So, anyways, let me get going. I might make another video because I have a rare chance with some time tonight, but I gotta drink my coffee and relax my voice for a bit.